There are over 500,000 alcoholics in Great Britain today. This man is a publican who had been drinking a bottle of whiskey a day or more for over 20 years.
The drink's messed me body up. Like, I've only got one kidney. You know what I mean? The other one just stopped functioning when I was about 15, I think, through drink, you know.
This is his liver at post-mortem. It is scarred and shrunken.
I used to go to this dance in the barracks in the Navy. I remember drinking all night there, and then around about 11 o'clock, everyone cleared off, and you used to see all these glasses on the table, you know, some with bitter in, some with spirits, you know, just used to go round and see them all off.
The cut surface of the liver shows the deep jaundice. Patients who take alcohol in excess can not only damage their liver, they can also damage the blood, the heart, and the nervous system.
My health did begin to suffer. I developed stomach ulcers and didn't do anything about getting them treatment. And this has been a relic that I've had with periods of remission ever since.
When they have cirrhosis, they often tend to bleed, sometimes into the skin.
The next day I had a fit. I can remember just talking to a fellow. I was going back up the bar to get another drink. My hand started going. I stopped my hand, and that's it. I can't remember no more.
But the most dangerous form of bleeding is from these veins in the gullet, when it can be catastrophic.
I started by drinking my mother's martini and sherry, you know, things like that. I remember doing that from about 8 onwards, you know, well, whenever I could. And it just progressed from there.
So I continued drinking after I went back to school to 6th year, mostly at weekends at that time, and surreptitiously because my parents were Presbyterians and total abstainers. As the years went on, I started drinking more heavily, and I started drinking spirits. So the time I was about 18, I suppose about 18, I was drinking upwards to 2 bottles of vodka a day.
That lady that's bleeding? Yes, well, we've got a good drip up at the moment, and she seems to be fairly stable. Yes, the blood will be here fairly shortly. I really think we ought to take her straight down and scope her now, and then I'll ring you back and tell you what we find.
When I joined the Navy, I was just before 18, and that's about the time that I really started drinking heavily. It used to be every day, you know, if I was at sea, then I'd be drinking cans of beer, like I'd have my ration of beer, and also have other people's rations of beer. And I was just permanently pissed.
There was, in the University Union, a beer bar where we used to foregather, and I found myself spending more and more time there, drinking as inexpensively as possible, very cheap brews, scrumpy cider, things like that. And then progressively I found myself skipping even the few lectures and tutorials that I did have to attend to. When I first had to start work and that, you know, sort of getting up in the mornings and going off and doing a day's work and that, I found it more or less impossible, you know, because I was sort of had an hangover and things like that. As soon as it was tea break or coffee break or lunch or whatever it was, we were all straight across the pub and a few pints and that. And I was sort of coming back half cut in the afternoon trying to do a job and that.
By the time I was about 21, I'd been at sea for 6 years, and I could drink. I could drink a bottle of gin in the first half of the cup final, which I'd done. If I wrote a letter home to my wife, I could drink a bottle of Cape brandy. And those things, that was lethal. That was even the name of the brandy. One was called Jet, one was called Limousine. It was just that people used to say that to get the Japanese up in the air to do these kamikaze flights, you had to give them a load of this, because you need some of that and you do anything.
Most of these patients have been taking alcohol and in large doses for many years, and there's absolutely no doubt that alcohol is one of the most poisonous substances that man can take. One of the particular dangers is that of bleeding. Patients can bleed from a variety of places, but usually they bleed from veins in the lower part of the gullet, which when they burst, can produce torrential bleeding, and the patient can die within minutes sometimes from loss of blood. And even if they don't suffer this bleeding, they can die from other causes, such as just suffering from liver failure, where the patient becomes iller and iller, and suffers brain damage as well, and fades away into oblivion.
Well, of course, drinking at sea was, it was just a never-ending thing. In the mornings, he'd start off with, well, whatever there was left. And during the day, he'd probably get a passenger to buy him a bottle, you know, because, well, we were issued with a bottle of spirit and a bottle of wine every day, not every week, but that didn't last very long, as you can imagine. And he'd probably get a passenger or somebody to buy a bottle for him, and then it would be after the lunch in the restaurant, he'd be down in the cabin in the afternoon, and he'd probably see that off. And amazingly, he'd be up in the restaurant again at night for dinner, you know, sort of carrying out his duties okay. And then after that, of course, it was down to the cabins again and calling on other people and other people coming into us and bringing a bottle with them. So virtually it was drinking every minute that we weren't actually working.
I found eventually that I was drinking perhaps a dozen pints of raw cider at lunchtime and finding a bottle somewhere in the afternoon and then drinking heavily again in the evening. And it reached the stage where I had left university, had found myself homeless and in London, and living rough, living as I could. I slept out on bomb sites, occasionally in reception centres, but mainly in the flop houses, which at that time, some 10 years ago, were fairly common in London. They're less so now, run by the Salvation Army and Rowton House and people of that kind.
If we do have to operate, there are a variety of things we can do, either trying to stop the bleeding directly by operating on the veins and tying them off, or trying to do another type of operation where one actually diverts the blood away from the liver and straight into the main vessel returned to the heart, the inferior vena cava.
It was funny in the morning because that's why I grew a beard, because I used to put the shaving foam until I just let my hand go like that. I get the razor and I used to look at this razor. It was coming nearer and nearer and nearer, and I used to have cuts up here, cuts down there with bloody razors to jump around. Oh, I thought, no. I thought, I've got to stop drinking. There's something wrong here somewhere. I can't afford it. Why do I need a drink?
Drink really messed my body up. You know, I lost a lot of weight. I didn't used to eat much at all. I just used to drink. In fact, the only time that I could eat is when I was drunk, because I'd wake up in the morning and I'd feel really terrible. You know, I'd have to go out and have a drink or something. Then I'd feel okay again, and then I could go out and maybe eat something. But it just became my life. I couldn't even go for a job without having a drink. I couldn't go on the bus. I could never feel confident without it.
If the operation is successful to stop the bleeding, a lot of these patients, unfortunately, die of liver failure as a direct result of the operation. If they don't die of liver failure, a lot of them suffer very severe brain damage. So there are plenty of reasons for trying to avoid operating if possible.
I'd always manage, you know, to get some money from somewhere. Like, I'd find someone and say, lend me £5, and they'd give me £5, and that'll be it. You know, they'd never see it again. Or I'd steal it, but I'd just always get it. I had so much drive, you know, just to get money. It was incredible, the amount of energy that went into it. I'd always meet up with people in pubs and bum drinks. I remember once stealing a blind box from a pub and not feeling too good about that, and yet there I was in a pub the same night with all this, you know, big handful of pennies and halfpennies and that, cashing them back.
I found that to earn money to get drink, I was doing casual work in kitchens, being paid daily, giving different names, working in a bottling plant for £3 or £4 a day, paying perhaps 30 or 40 pence, a few shillings just for some place to lie down at night, and spending the rest in drink, waking up in the morning again broke.
Yeah, well, I never sort of really had any money. Most of the money I had sort of went in the pub. I'd sort of go to any length to get money. I committed armed robberies and that. I sold everything that I had, basically, you know. Like, I had a really valuable record collection with some blues records dating back to the 20s and 30s, you know, really sort of old, which was worth hundreds of pounds, you know. And I sort of went out one day and sold it for five pounds, you know, 300 odd records for £5.
For patients who've been drinking for a long time, their only real chance of surviving is to stop drinking absolutely completely. There is a very strong chance that they will die from the operation itself. If they don't die from the operation, then they will suffer severe liver damage and die of liver failure, or that they will be left with gross brain damage and become cabbages for the rest of their lives.
I think all alcoholics don't really worry about themselves. You can be told that you're going to die because your liver's failing. I know personally as a doctor that I'm damaging myself with every drink that I take. And that wasn't the reason that I stopped drinking. It was that you suddenly realize that you're doing something that you can't control, that you've tried everything to stop yourself, and you know that you can't. You rely on it. You can't stop your job because you need to drink and drink to keep going at your job. And then you do reach the point where you know that your time is totally limited, that you're coming to the end of that period, and it could be a matter of days or weeks. And that is the time that I decided that I must have some help, and that life then could start again.
Now, somehow, perhaps you were ashamed of being repeatedly drunk, and you are ashamed of this within inside yourself.
Dr. Panton has provided me with the greatest help that I've obtained while I've been on the unit. It's a doubly close bond for me because besides being in the medical profession, he also has suffered from the same disease and conquered it. And therefore one does feel that one is listening to somebody who understands the problems one has, why one would appear to be so obstinate to what seems like a very simple cure. Stop drinking, get better. And one can see in him what one's aiming to achieve for oneself. He's a happy man. His job satisfies him. His family is content. And it gives one all the good reasons for giving up the alcohol.
You're honest. This is the difference between your drinking and people who drink without problems. You see, I want you to change in such a way that you don't have to rely on anyone else to run your lives. You can be responsible entirely for yourselves. You don't have to go around creeping to anyone. So where's the difficulty? The difficulty is that you're reluctant, really, to stop drinking. You would like to be able to go on drinking without the disability. But this is not possible. So, although you don't want to suffer from the results of it, you're very, very sorry to say goodbye to what you considered was your old friend. And until you can realize that this was never a friend to you, but always the worst enemy you've ever had, you still feel inclined to go and shake hands with it again.
I have a feeling that I was destined to become an alcoholic. Many of my friends drank certainly as heavily, sometimes more heavily than I did then. And they still drink heavily now. But they don't rely on their drinks, and they don't need a drink, they don't miss a drink. They can go a week without it. When you notice it not being there, when you definitely require a drink to function, that it starts to get this grip on you. This is when you really become an alcoholic, when you must have a drink. You're unhappy. You're on holiday, it's the first thing you think of when you get on the aeroplane. Not the view out of the window, or isn't it great to get away, but you're hopping about waiting to press that button to get the stewardess along to fetch you the first gin, and you've got her to bring two in case she's a long time with the rest of the passengers. Then you're starting to get hooked on it.
Yes, it stares you, in the face all the time. You see it on the television. When you go around to see someone, it's always, let's go out for a drink. And it's tied up with a manly thing as well. Like a man can't go into a pub and have a tomato juice or a Coke or something. He has to have a pint of lager or bitter or something. I think in 6 months' time, the whole thing will seem like a dream. Christmas will be past, and I'll be back in, I hope, full work of not drinking, and one will remember it, and it will fade quickly. And I think this is the great danger involved, because as it fades, and as one becomes more assured of oneself, that dreadful feeling will creep back. I'm sure at this party it won't hurt me to have one gin. It won't hurt me at this christening to drink to the baby's health or life. And this is the great temptation, and this is the thing where one must immediately pull oneself up and think back to the unit and think of Dr. Panton or any of the other people who've taught one. One's got to think no, because one drink means 2 drinks, and 2 drinks means, well, I've had 2 drinks, so I might as well finish tonight off, but I'm not going to have one in the morning. And come the morning, one has to go to work, and the shakes are back, and one has one just as steady as shakes. And one comes back in the evening, goes past the pub, and thinks, well, I've done it now. I'll have another evening in the pub, but I will stop at the weekend. And gradually one slips back. And the second time one comes back here, the recovery is going to be twice as difficult. Because whereas one has confidence in oneself and hopes that one's going to achieve sobriety the first time, when one's been through the whole unit and had everything going for one, and one slips, then obviously the second time, it's 4 times as difficult. The third time, it's not even worth the trouble. And then one might as well be dead.
Well, it's 14 months now since I came out of Nelson Ward, and it's not been anything like as easy a battle as I thought it was going to be. It should be all or nothing, as I was taught to understand, but one is inevitably tempted all the time to just have a try at one drink, or at a party, or at a meeting, or when one's feeling happy, one thinks, well, I can have one drink and I'll be fine. I came out of the ward and I went immediately to Fratton Station, round the corner to an off-licence, and I bought myself 4 miniature bottles of gin, and I drank them on the way home. And I was back inside 4 hours. The whole 6 weeks in hospital were completely wasted. But I recovered with the help of Alcoholics Anonymous and managed for 6 months after that, until pressures of work and a course for an examination came together, and I started to drink again. And over the next 6 months I managed to contain my drinking to a reasonable level in the evening and to do my work normally. But it was inevitable that things should come to a head again, which they did in the new year, when I drank heavily again, was incapable of going back to work, was forced to offer my resignation, and was exactly back where I'd been a year and a half before.